Hello everyone, Davey here, back again to review the second episode for the new television show on Fox, Gotham, which is the new Batman show that's not about Batman, but it's about Jim Gordon instead, and him rising through the ranks in Gotham City. And so, I will start off with a little disclaimer here, something that some of you guys may or may not know about me when it comes to me watching shows on television. You know how at the end of every episode, or at least this isn't exactly the case for every single television show that's out there, but it is for the most part with some, if not most, of the television shows that I personally watch. I know it's the case for Walking Dead. It was the case with Breaking Bad when I used to watch it, or when it was on, used to watch it. It makes it sound like I stopped watching it because I wasn't happy with it. Anyways, yeah, plenty of shows do that, the whole next time on blah blah blah, or next week on so-and-so. I don't watch those. I don't watch any kind of preview for the next episode, whether it be that little snippet at the end of the episode saying next time on blah blah blah, or online they release a preview of some kind, whether it be photos or a featurette or some kind of video saying this is what's going to happen next week. I don't watch those because it's only a week and it's television. I can just wait, get home, turn on the TV. I don't have DVR, so I have to get home on time and watch it. It's not that big of a deal. It's not like a movie or a video game where, yeah, I'll watch the trailer because I need to wait a very large amount of time to be able to check out the movie, or pay a certain amount to be able to buy the game if I am that excited about it. But this is just television. I can just wait. It's just a week, and it's free. Well, kind of free. You're technically still paying for the service, but you know what I'm saying. And so I don't watch those. So I go into every episode fresh as... I don't have a metaphor, but I go into it fresh. So, I was unaware that Gotham was going to become a case of the week type of show, like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. started off being, which is probably my biggest disappointment with this episode, is learning that we are investigating a new case that has nothing to do with the death of Thomas and Martha Wayne. That really bummed me out. I was really hoping for that murder case to be a cohesive thing from episode to episode to really push the story along. Instead, we take a break from it and investigate the disappearances of these homeless kids that are presumably being snatched, like they keep saying. They're snatched by these two, this pair of cartoonish caricatures that are stealing these kids for their own personal evil agenda and whatnot. And personally, I never cared. And not only did I not care for this subplot, but the two characters that you have introduced in this episode that are supposed to be the Snatchers, as they keep referring to them, they presented an issue that was somewhat apparent in the pilot, but it becomes even more apparent in this episode, and that is an inconsistent tone with the show. You can't have scenes where people get their throats slit and then a bunch of blood sprays everywhere, or like you saw in this episode, a bottle to the neck and then you just see blood spray all over the windshield, or other very brutal things, dark elements, and combine them with these two characters that are just so cartoony and so like, I'm like, what? Come on. You can't have this. You can't have these two tones clash with one another because it just doesn't mix. Okay, you just can't have a show like that. You need to settle. You can't have a show like that. You can't have a video game like that. You can't have a movie like that. You need to settle on a tone, because therefore you're being schizophrenic. You don't know what you are, and us as audience members don't know what you are. You can't do that, and you really cannot do that with a television show that's focusing on the origins of Gotham City. You really need to settle on a tone. Do you want to be campy, like we've seen Batman be, or do you want to be gritty, or do you want to be something that's somewhat in between but very plausible and grounded, like, say, the Arkham games? It had its fair share of fantastical elements or comic booky elements that wouldn't exist in real life, but they were played in such a realistic way that you bought into it. You were gripped by it. This show is so far not doing that very well. Like I said, they're mixing tones by having all these very dark things in it, such brutal stuff, but then mixing it with this over the top nature to not only these two particular characters, but also other things in the background. One of the things that I didn't appreciate about the investigation of this new case that had nothing to do with the Wayne murders, is two issues with both Gordon and Bullock. One that was kind of mentioned by this reviewer on IGN. I read his review and I didn't really think about this until he brought it up, and I'm like, this might be kind of true, but it is the first two episodes of the season, so right now I'm willing to give it a pass, but if this is still an issue later on in the season, it could become a problem. And that is that Gordon is a little bit too stoic for the moment. He doesn't really have that much of a personality, but like I said, I don't mind that considering that it's only the first couple of episodes. Maybe down the line, he'll grow a personality and he'll be a much more complex character. But for now, he's so stoic that he hardly even cracks a smile when he's with his wife at home eating Chinese food. I mean, really do loosen up a little bit. And then you got Bullock, who I felt was just a little over the top in this episode, especially in the beginning where he is threatening to... he almost gets into a fight with Gordon over Bullock wanting to beat up Corey Baxter from That's So Raven. I wish he was more charismatic with his approach to try to persuade Gordon into letting him beat that kid up, much like he actually practically beats up that guy later on in the episode. But instead, he's just like, look at this, what I have to work with. Look at what I have to work with. This guy, this rookie. Well, gee, I don't know, Bullock. Maybe if you give us a couple of episodes to recognize what you're complaining about, maybe we'll know. Now, the title for this episode is called Selina Kyle. And the reason for that is because this plot with the Snatchers also gives us a way more formal introduction to Selina Kyle, aka Catwoman, at the age of 13. Because she happens to be one of the homeless kids that witnesses the kidnapping of all these other kids. And for an episode that is called Selina Kyle, there's barely any Selina Kyle. I mean, she is absent for a large amount, but when she does show up, I liked her character. I didn't think she brought anything new to the table. I didn't think that she was very fascinating, but there were certain things to her that I was okay with, and overall, I'm okay with the character, but we didn't get enough of her to really get the gist of what she's all about, except for the sole purpose to bring back the subject of the Wayne murders, because like I said, they don't talk about it whatsoever until the very end, where she confesses to Gordon that she witnessed the whole thing and she knows who killed him. And of course, we have to cut it off right there to keep you interested and have you come back for the third episode. Other elements that return in the second episode is this little arc with Penguin, who is now concocting his plan to come back to Gotham in a very big way. And I actually really did like this little subplot. It's a bit brief. I mean, he's literally in the episode for like 2 or 3 scenes, and they hardly last that very long, but I really liked it. Granted, I wish we were at this phase in Penguin's life a little later in the season, so that, like I said, we can develop his character into becoming that psycho killer that he once again represents at the beginning of this episode by killing that guy and then taking the other guy hostage. But I really dug how, not only do I like the actor as the character, but I also like how he's steadily bringing together his plan and becoming the kingpin that we'll know later on. Like I said, I wish we could have been at this point later on in the season, and I really hope they stop shoehorning in the whole "I don't like to be called Penguin" thing in such a, like I said, shoehorned way. You know, the way you were walking there, you look like a penguin. No. Just no. And because she's married to Will Smith, Fish Mooney returns in this episode, and her appearance in this episode is way more brief than she was in the pilot. And thank God for that, because she's still being her cartoonish self. Performance-wise, I thought she was a bit better than the pilot, but still, you can definitely see her character on Saturday morning, being that there's still Saturday morning cartoons, because from what I hear, they're becoming extinct, and that is very, very saddening. But much like what Selina Kyle brought at the end of the episode, bringing back the subject of the Wayne murders, Fish Mooney's actual scene, because she appears a little later on in the episode, but her actual scene within this episode also brings back Carmine Falcone, who truly presents himself as an actual villain, an actual threat, and who plays it so subtle, like at least the actor, the actor as well as the character, they play it so subtle, but you get the idea that this guy is intimidating by having that guy get beaten up, and he also provides a really strong contrast to the cartoony nature of not only Fish Mooney but also those snatchers. All right, I want to see more villains like Carmine Falcone that are a little bit more laid back and subtle rather than over the top and cartoon. Let's see. I actually have a tweet here from the famous Jeremy Johns, and I was looking through my Twitter and I saw his tweet about Gotham here. I'm gonna read it here, and I quote: "Dear Gotham, just because your characters have ties to a comic book universe does not mean they all need to act like cartoons." I could not agree with you more, Jeremy, because I just really want some of these characters to feel a little bit more grounded. And if you're going for a campy tone, then just be all campy. Don't mix it with all these other things about, all these dark elements and all these people getting murdered, but then you mix in some of these cartoonish characters. I mean, guys, come on already. And the other thing, and probably the last thing that this episode provided us with that I actually really dug is, of course, all the material with Gordon, Bruce, and Alfred. Not only do we see, like I said, some more connection between Gordon and Bruce, and why Bruce trusts in Gordon, because he was practically the first figure who came to him saying everything's going to be alright that night of his parents' murder. But we also see more of Bruce developing that mindset of of how he's going to be later on in his life. Now, I do think that it's a little early for him to start training himself to conquer fear, because I always felt like that was something that he tackles later on. He's in his mid to late 20s, because even the actor said he even knows that Bruce doesn't actually become Batman until he's 30. So I think it's a little odd that the writers are making him train himself, both psychologically and most notably physically, by burning himself and cutting himself at this age. He's 13 or 14. Any adult is going to look at the cuts and the burns on his hands and his arms and be like, your ass needs to be on suicide watch, especially after what you just witnessed. They're not going to buy into him saying, oh, I'm training myself so that I can conquer fear. No, that doesn't make any sense. So I really would have appreciated if right now we were to focus more on Bruce being vulnerable to the idea of his parents being gone and going through that, rather than to already start his training. Don't get me wrong, it's cool to see, and like I said, I still get goosebumps whenever Gordon and Bruce interact, because you know what's going to come from this relationship. But it's just a little too early. Same thing with Cobblepot. It's too early. They really do need to develop more of this. But the other thing that I really liked is more of Alfred, or at least this iteration of Alfred, because we've only seen glimpses of Alfred in the pilot episode, and he barely spoke. And so far, almost every recent iteration of Alfred has always painted him as this guy with a calm demeanor, who's very warm, who's much more warm and fuzzy to Bruce as that father figure. But this guy is more rugged and tough as nails and bare-knuckled, and he'll whoop your ass if you need it. But then right afterward, he'll give you a hug to let you know that he loves you. And from what I understand, this kind of Alfred has been presented before in comic books and stuff like that. And I like that they are actually bringing this form of Alfred in live action through this series. And it also harkens to my opinion about how they're taking some liberties with not only the murder of Bruce's parents, but some of the other origins of some of the other characters, despite, like I said, being shoehorned into this series and shoehorned way too early at that. I like that they're twisting some of these things, because how many times can we watch the same thing over and over? How many times can we watch Bruce's parents die over and over and over, whether it be in flashbacks or whatever? We kind of have the idea of what Bruce's past is that leads to him becoming Batman. It's nice to see a rather much more fresh take on the origin story, so that it feels new to us. So this second episode had an awful lot of things that I did like, mostly on some of the characters that I believe to be the more stronger characters in this ensemble for the series. But not only do they need to work on the acting and the tone, but the introduction of a new case that deviated away from the main case, which is supposed to be the Wayne murders, has me worried for what is to come from the series. And I will still give this episode, Selina Kyle, a 7 out of 10, but it's a very, very low 7 out of 10. It was borderline 6 if it wasn't for some of the material between Gordon, Alfred, and Bruce towards the end, as well as that arc with Penguin that I really liked, and I'm really hoping to see more of in the next few episodes. But for now, I'm definitely becoming worried for this show, and much more than I was with the pilot. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys thought of the second episode for Gotham, and what are your thoughts currently on the show. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care.